Hi there everyone, it's Mindy from My Creative Scoop and I'm back with another Copic marker tutorial for My Favorite Things. This month I'm using this adorable stamp called Sweet Summertime, and I'm going to be sharing with you how to color her using the no line technique, and I'm also going to be sharing with you how to color that big watermelon background, creating it using just our Copic markers. So let's get started. Before we get to that background, we're going to go ahead and color her first. I've stamped her in my Memento Desert Sand ink, and I've stamped onto my Copic Express It blending card. First thing we're going to be coloring is her skin tone. So I'm going to be using R32, R30, E13, E11, E00, and E000. I'm going to start with my R32 because I like to get the cheek color down before I add any of the skin tones, so that way it will blend out so you don't have that really harsh pink cheek. It blends nicely into the skin. So now I'm going to take my R30 and just come out a little bit more, so just making those circles a little bit bigger. And now I'm going to take my E13. I'm just going to go right along the hairline and I'm going to do the same thing over here. And then a little bit on her neck, and then also right here where closest to the watermelon is, on her elbow. Same thing over here, and then we'll do the leg set afterwards. So then I'm going to take my E11, I'm going to come down a little bit more, just coming out, blending out that E13. Same thing on this side. And then a little bit onto her little elbow that's peeking out from that watermelon. Now I'm going to take my E00. This time I'm going to be adding more of this color down. So I'm pulling that E11 out. So that way it picks up a little bit of that color and it softens that edge of the E11, so that way it doesn't have that really harsh defined line. It will blend it out for us. Add a little bit of color down here, and this time I'm going to fill in her little fingers. And then I'm going to take my E000. Before I just fill in the rest of the face, I want to get a good blend along that edge. So I'm just going to go over it, pulling the E00 out a little bit more. And once I've done that, then I'll go ahead and fill in the center. So it still looks a little blotchy, so we need to get a little bit more ink down. So we're going to repeat. Now I want this to have a little bit more of a softer tone, so I'm not going to go back with my E13. I'm just going to go back with my E11. Go back into those shadowed areas where we first added the darker colors, the E13 and the E11, and just give a little flick coming out. Don't worry about the eyes. We're going to fill it in with a pen. And then I'm going to take my E00, fill in this rest of the ears, and then again do kind of a heavy flick. Since we've already got some ink down, it will blend out nicely. And we'll go ahead and touch up down here. And then that E000. So let's go ahead and do the leg. So I'm going to go back with my E13. If you want, you can, if you've lost some of that pink, that rosiness on the cheeks, you can go back with your R30 and just give it a little touch up. So now with my E13, I'm going to create a shadow on the inside. And once I get to where about the knee is going to go, I'm going to just give a little flick in, so that way I can create a kneecap. And then I'm going to go all along the bottom part of her shorts, because her shorts are going to be casting a shadow onto her legs. And then the same thing over here. I'm going to come down and then give a little flick where her kneecap is. So now I'm going to take my E11, come out a little bit more. Same thing over here. And then my E00. So I want to get a nice blend right along the edge before I just start filling in most of it. You want to blend out that E11. And then my E000. Get a nice blend along the edge and then just fill in the rest of the white area. So now we're going to go back and repeat that. Again, we're not going to go back with the E13. We want it to be a little softer. And I'm going to take my E11 and then again with my E00. And again with my E000. So the next thing we're going to color is her shirt and her socks. Since those things are the next lightest thing, well, they're actually lighter than the skin, but I always like to do the skin first. So then the way that I color is I'll color the next lightest thing and then I'll keep getting darker as I go. So we're gonna color her shirt, which is gonna be white, and also her socks. So for that, I'm going to be using N0, N1, and N3. I'm gonna start with my N1. Since we want it to be white, we're just giving her shirt and her socks just a little bit of a shadow. So the trick is to leave a white space. So I don't like to start with the darkest one because sometimes you can have a tendency of over coloring, and you can always go back and touch it up and add a little bit more, but you can't take it away. So this is why I start with my middle color. So I'm going to take my N1, and right underneath the watermelon, I'm just going to make a line. And then I'm going to come down just a little bit along the sides. And then for the socks, I'm just going to come right along the inside and right along the top part. So it's just the inside part of the socks. And then we're going to take N0, and I'm going to come down a little bit more along the edge, along the outline of the stamp. And then I'm just going to make that line a little bit thicker, and then I'm going to take the same N0 and I'm going to make a little flick going down just so it has a little bit more of a fade, but yet the concentrated shadow is directly underneath the watermelon. And the same thing over here. I'm just going to give a couple little flicks just to bring out that shadow. And now I'm going to take my N3 and I'm just going to go right along the bottom part of that watermelon. So I'm really just think of it as tracing the outline just to make that shadow pop a little bit more. Same thing down here. I'm going to just trace along the outline of the stamp. So a little bit of color really makes a difference and really makes it stand out and pop. So I'm actually going to go back with my N0 and do another flick bringing down that shadow because I have kind of a harsh line right there, so I just want to kind of make it fade a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so the next thing we're going to color is her hair. So I'm going to be using E43, E42, and E41. I'm going to start with my E42, and I'm just going to trace the lines that are already there, giving them a little bit more definition right at the base and right up at the top of her head, and also coming out of her ponytail just a little bit. So a little bit of color goes a long way. And you can, like I said before, you can always go back and add more if it doesn't stand out or you want it to be a little bit darker. So now I'm going to take my E41 and I'm just going to brush the nib right across So it's just adding a little bit of color. I'm not really blending out those lines that we made with the E42, because you want to, I like to have, for my hair to have texture still, so I don't really like to blend it out. But there's not a whole lot of room here for a whole lot of detail. So now I'm going to take my E43 and just add a little bit of color where we added that E42. And this is really going to make it stand out. So just a little flick, and wherever your marker stops, that's where you stop. You don't have to try to continue the line. That way it looks a little bit more natural. So we're going to do the same thing over here. And that's it. So I'm going to take my B00 and just fill in her little hair tie. And now we're ready to color her shorts. So I don't have a whole lot of definition to her shorts. I'm going to be using B000, so 3 zeros, and B00, and I'm also going to be using a little bit of N1 for some shadows. So I'm going to take my B000 and I'm just going to fill in her entire shorts. And then I'm going to take my B00. I'm going to go ahead and make a little bit of a shadow right here along inside the pocket. And also where her shirt's coming out, that would be casting a shadow onto her shorts. So we're just going to go ahead and make a shadow directly underneath her shirt, and also on the inside parts of her shorts. So I'm going to go back with my B000, push the color out just to kind of soften it up a little bit. And then I'm going to take my N1 and I really want to focus on that shadow directly underneath her shirt. So I'm just going to follow that line and a little bit in her pockets. So let's go ahead and color her shoes. For that, I'm going to be using N7, N5, and N3. I'm going to start with my N7. And right along the inside part of her shoes. So it's like kind of the same way we did the socks. It's just all along the inside. You want to keep that same shadow pattern, so that way all the shadows match, so it makes sense that way. You don't want to have a shadow coming over here or making it darker over here, because we have the shadow of the socks on the inside. So now I'm going to take my N5 and just pull out that color a little bit more, just coming out a little bit farther. And then I'm going to take my N3, get a nice blend right along the edge of that N5 before we go ahead and fill it all in. Same thing over here. So now for the watermelon. Okay, so for the watermelon, we're going to be using YG17, YG13, YG00, R37, R35, and R32. We're going to start with the YG17, and right along the edge, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of trace that line, making it a little thick. And then I'm going to take my YG13 and just come right along the side of that. I'm going to kind of go over it a couple of times going into that YG17, so that way it blends and it doesn't have just two lines right next to each other.
And then I'm going to take my YG00, and even though I filled in all of the skin, I'm still going to, because you have that kind of a lighter white gap between the skin and where it starts getting red. So I'm just going to go right along the edge here using my YG00 just to have it fade into the actual watermelon part, the good part. And then we're going to take the R32, and I'm just going to fill in everything. You just want to put all that color down. And then I'm going to take my R35, and I'm just going to kind of go through and make some lines, just little squiggles, kind of in between the seeds. And then I'm going to go back with my R32 and just blend it out, because going directly over that R35. And then I'm going to take my R37 and just, I'm not going to go and add as much as we did with the R35, but I'm going to go through and add some darker spots. And then let's take that R35, kind of fade out that R37. And then again with the R32. Then I'm going to take my N5, and I know it's hard to see since we did the no line, but if you go back and look, you can kind of get an idea from the image, the stamped image. Go back and look at your stamp, and so that way you know where to add your little lines for the seeds. All right. Then I'm going to take my micron pen. You could use a Copic multiliner if you have that instead, or a regular pen, or if you have a very steady hand, you could use the tip of your N7 or N9. Just gonna make my little eyes a little darker. And I'm gonna go back with my E13 and just give a little trace of the nose and the mouth, just to make it stand out a little bit. And if you want, you could take your white gel pen, add a couple little lines, so that way it looks like it's juicy. Add some highlights to it. So now we are ready to do our watermelon background. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do for the watermelon background is do the skin. So let's go ahead and start with the YG17. And the way that I have it, we're gonna kind of come off the page a little bit. So this card here is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. The black piece is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So then this piece of the Copic Express It blending card is going to be 4 by 5 1/4. So I'm just going to take my YG17 and we're just going to have it kind of go off the page. So I'm just going to kind of draw it coming right like that. And then I'm going to take my YG7, oh, I'm sorry, that was YG17. Then I'm going to take my YG13. And I want to get a nice blend right along the edge of that YG17. So I'm just going to kind of go over it a little bit. And then I'm going to go back, making it a little bit thicker. And then I'm going to take my YG00. And then I'm going to go back with my YG17 just to darken up along that edge. All right, so now for the watermelon. So this gets a little, it's gonna look very messy, but it will come together and look great. So we're gonna start with R32. And let's go ahead and start right along the bottom. And we're just basically gonna fill in, we want it to have that roundness. So we just wanna get some color down to work with. Leave all of that lighter up here. We're gonna work on that a little bit more defined and not have such, because right now we're just scribbles. So now I'm gonna take my R35 and again, just do some scribbles. I'm gonna focus more on the areas where I've already added color. That way all of those white areas will stay its lightest. Except for down here. I want the down here to be a little darker. And now let's go back with R32. So this time I'm going to stay closer to the R35 so we can get a nice blend right along the edge. Okay, so now everything's filled in. We have that little bit of the R35, and then we've gone ahead and filled in everything with the R32. So let's go back with the R35 and stay where we have it where it's the darkest. So right in here and over here. And then let's take some R37 and do the same thing. I'm going to keep it dark just in those areas. We can always go back and add more if it's not red enough. But just a couple little scribbles, and then we'll add a couple little lines going up. And then let's go back with the R35 so we can blend out some of that R37. And then again with the R32. And just stay right along the edge, still leaving those other areas white or lighter. That lighter, just the R32. So we want to focus mainly on those darker colors. So let's get out the R35 again. Need a little bit of a refill. There we go. So since this is a large area, sometimes it's easier to, oh, I guess I refilled too much. That's all right. So if using the chisel end, will give you more of a solid. So I know a lot of people would probably go back and remake the video, but I don't like doing that. I like to show you how I fix my mistakes, because if I'm making them, I know other people are making them, so we will learn together. Let's go ahead and add some more of this R35. Since I went really dark, now I have to add a little bit, go a little bit darker than what I anticipated. So now I'm going back with some R32. And let's go back with some R37. And let's go back with R35. So I'm doing more of a heavy flick now, so that way I can push some of that darker color out. Let's try this in again. And then let's take the R32. Take some more R37 over here. It's a very juicy watermelon. Go back with some R32 right over here where it starts to get a little bit lighter. And if I go back and add a little bit of the R32 over this dark area, it will pull away, the darker ink will kind of pull away. So that way we can add a little bit more of that, have a little bit more texture. Okay, so now I'm going to take my R32 and I'm just kind of grazing the paper. And you're also going to be needing R30 over here. And you want to come all the way to the green. I'm going to go back with my R32. And then I'm going to, right along the edge, I'm just going to kind of go back and make a couple little dots and little squiggles. And let's go ahead and take that R37 R35. Another great way to kind of do more realistic images is to Google them. So if you go and you Google clip art or drawings or paintings or just regular photos, so you can kind of get an idea of how it goes. So it doesn't, I mean, not every watermelon's gonna look the same. This one's a lot lighter. This one actually looks, it looks more juicy, it looks like, or more of a realistic watermelon. So now I'm gonna go ahead and take my white gel pen. Actually, no, let's go ahead and do the seeds first. So I'm going to take my N5 and let's just draw some seeds and then fill it in. This is also a great opportunity if you feel like you don't like a certain area. So like right here, I didn't blend it out too good, so I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of camouflage it and put a seed there. Maybe make one going off the page. And then I'm going to take my N7 and I'm going to give a little bit of a shadow. So just right along the bottom. And then if you if you want it to be blended out a little bit better, go back with your N5 and just give a couple little flicks right at the N7 just to kind of blend it out. So now I'm going to take my white gel pen and I'm just going to make a couple like lines going through. Some little highlights, and I'm also going to make a couple little highlights on the seeds. All right, so now the card is ready to be put together. Okay, so here is my card all put together. I actually really like the way that really deep red where my marker blobbed out. I think it looks more realistic. It looks way more juicy. So here's my two cards that I made. The sentiment is also from My Favorite Things. It comes with that really awesome, sweet white border. And I love the way that the black really makes it pop and really resemble the seeds to the watermelon. So the sentiment I'm using is also from the Sweet Sentiments die set or stamp set. And then I'm using, of course, the cute little girl with the watermelon. So I hope you enjoyed this month's tutorial. I will see you again next month. Have a wonderful day.